Anyway, we don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. We just kind of start saying, and you go ahead. You were saying something about the
about the beginning stages. So I feel that in the beginning I had a lot of daily emotional pain, and when I first met you, and since then, you've helped me, guided me through a lot, and realizing a lot of parts of myself that I am not, and removing those parts of the ego. And then I forget sometimes when it comes to hearing other people talk to me about things or getting to know people and seeing where maybe some of their emotional pain is, and how to the beginning stages of that, because I feel like I've removed some of that. I don't have that same stress every day. I don't really have any stress during the day anymore, not like I used to. I used to get emotional about my kids and a lot of that stuff, and missing them and realizing all the attachments I had. But since removing a lot of those, again, I forget about the beginning stages, and I think sometimes that's where you have expectation, it seems, of people to. It's almost like, why don't they get it, right? And it's not like a judgment or an expectation in a way. I think it's like, for me, it's a forgetfulness, like going back and being like, how did I do that in the first place? Because once it's gone, it's like you don't really think about it anymore. So to try to go back there sometimes, again, it's like a forgetful thing of seeing it in others and trying to remind myself, like, oh, how did I even get through that originally, or how did I see that, And you helped me, guide me through that stuff. And then again, seeing that in other people. So I think the beginning part for people is important, and them trying to help them see the parts that are causing them the emotional pain that they're kind of stuck on. So I believe we become stuck on things, right? We get attached to our past memories and all that stuff, as you've said. So trying to help someone see that and recognize it for what it is, and then the ego does not like that, right? And it tends to push back. And I find that becomes, you have to be wary and talking with someone and trying to help coach them that you're not talking to the ego, as you've taught me.
I guess at the beginning, when I was going through the changes that I went through the same thing, because it came very naturally to me. I just did it, and I thought that it is going to be normal for everybody else, because I'm no different from others. If I can't do it, somebody else can do it too. And I think that is the process that every person would have to go through individually, and because they are going through it and they are finding their own way of doing it. They think that is the easiest ways to do. Now, for you and I, because we had to find our true self, who we are and why we are here, or how to deal with life itself, we looked at ourselves and we start learning about who we really are, and start removing or deleting anything that was not us. But we are assuming that everybody else is capable of doing that.
And I've asked you that recently too, about how do we help those that, because everybody is here for their own experience, I believe, and they have, as you had said, right, like they need to go through their process, and we can't really push them off their stool or push them off their position as to what they believe their reality is. So I think I asked you a few days ago about how can we, everybody, I believe, is to awaken at some point. But how do we help the ones that maybe are kind of stuck, right? Like you were just saying, that it's like they need to go through the process, but is there a way that we can show them how to maybe speed up the process, or I'm not really sure how to phrase it, but how to help get them off their stool or help them awaken faster? Like, is that even possible? Or, like we have that expectation to a degree that everybody is capable. But is it necessary for us to speed the process up for them?
I think by naturally we want to help someone, and especially when you know that you're living a life without stress, without fear, without that anger, and you want to reach out and help others. And when you reach out and you want to explain to them, this is a fantastic life to have, and they reject you and they say, no, we don't want. But we have to see, are they rejecting us, or they are rejecting that happiness that they have? Now, if they are rejecting that, they don't want to be happy and they want to be the way they are, then you are asking, how can we help them?
Because again, they're here for their own experience, right? Like their own awakening process, so to speak. And they do feel like, some of the people I've talked to as friends and whatnot, they feel that it's a necessity, almost like the experience and everything. And they're just it's like, I always feel the ego is very tricky and it's very good at masking things, right? Like you try to point something out that it may be attached to, and then it's quick to defend, right? And it does not want to lose that. It's part of its strength, and trying to remove those things in a way and help, like you were saying, show them. I guess I don't have the best words to sort of articulate it right now. But.
No, I think why do we want to help them? That thing is, do we want to help them to give them a good life, or we want to help them to learn about spirituality, or we want them to learn about themselves? Which one is it?
In the beginning, for me, I had to be careful to watch, because in the beginning, I think it was ego related, where I was like almost a sense of entitlement, like I was better because I had maybe achieved some of that. But then I later became more aware through observing that it's not so much now about wanting to be better or like look at me type thing, right? It's about, I just feel that I have this peace, right? And I just want others to know that it's possible and share that with them to a degree, especially when you see ones that are really suffering or in pain. Like for me, it's just like, it's almost like a pining, like a wanting to show them or try to help them be free of that, And again, I don't think it's ego. It's not a selfish sort of position. It's about just wanting to share that freedom, in some way.
Now, if you and I go and talk to someone that we know that they are in pain, and we just sit with them, and just being with them, I believe it would help. They realize something within you that they cannot find in themselves. And they would eventually ask, what do you have that I don't have? And all you can explain, it is what you have. I think that what initially people like you and I would do is we know that we have something like a chocolate. We know it's tasty. And we know that person that does not have chocolate and is hungry, we have an abundance of that chocolate and we want to give it to them. And they absolutely have no idea what chocolate is. They're going to reject it. It doesn't matter how tasty, how wonderful it is for them, they're going to reject it. Because they don't know. They don't understand life without stress. But you have a stress. You have the pain. We all have the same thing. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is the way that we deal with what comes to our life. The way that we face it. We don't reject it. We no longer reject it. We accept it and we look at it and say, okay, that's it. This is the way it is. Now, I'm not going to fight it. Now, you have come to that conclusion that fighting is not going to do absolutely nothing.
It intensifies the pain almost, you know.
And you have that understanding, but you go to somebody else that doesn't know any better, it would fight you. Now, we have to be very careful. If we fight them, and if we force them to do something that is right for them, we have to ask ourselves, who's doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it me? Is it this my ego that wants to do it, or it is the source wants to do it?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's who's doing it really?
And that's why I said a few minutes ago that in the beginning I knew it was ego related, for sure, right? And I was unconscious of that. But I think I've sort of come to the observation that now it's more source related. I believe, you know, like I could still be wrong in some cases where I think ego still, again, it's tricky. I feel so it does sneak in there sometimes, but the larger component now is, I believe, from source. Like I just want people to have, as you say, some of that chocolate, you know, that piece that, because again, everybody has their process, right? They have their quote unquote their steps, even though there may not be any, but they have their process of, like as myself, I had to go through a process. Couldn't just snap my fingers and be at peace, right? I had to unfold a lot of it. And again, how do we do that? Like how do we help those become,
I think,
more aware of it?
What I see is that some of the gathering that you and I we saw it not too long ago, and we participate in the gathering, and these are the people that are looking for a life which is going to give them total happiness. They're seeking the joy and happiness. But once you go in their gathering and you observe them, all they are interested is to have fun and dance, do 1 hour meditation, and then participate in some activity that removes them from the pain and suffering that they have temporarily. And then they fall back in the same place that they were. And you definitely know that this is not it. Spirituality does not mean that you have to come jump up and down and meditate for 4 hours and 5 hours a week and sit in a corner and stay quiet and think. This is it. But you see, most people are trapped in that. And you know that spirituality is not this. Spirituality is to be with the universal law. It is that universal law, that energy. It means that you fall into that energy, that current, the same the water. You fall into the current and you flow with it. You don't fight it. You don't go back in and out of it. That most people that do that you think that they are part of a spirituality and they are seeking for them to have that joy and happiness that you have now, but they go in, they wet their feet, and they come out. And you would look at them and say, but this is wrong. This is not the temporary fix. We want to give you something that is permanent, something that you are becoming part of that energy all the time.
An everlasting piece of chocolate.
That's it. You eat the chocolate anytime you want, and the chocolate becomes you. You are the chocolate now. It's not that you taste it and you walk away, and then whenever you feel like it and you get hungry and you want a taste of that chocolate, you go and have a bite. And that's what we saw in the meetings, some of the meetings that we went in. And then you and I, we think, but they need help. But how can we help them when they are totally refusing help? When they misunderstand the meaning of what the spirituality is. The spirituality, I think, it is wrong. I think I'm not comfortable with the spirituality part of it. Spiritual, we should call it the being with the energy, being with the universal energy, being with the movement of the direction of this energy. The spirituality becomes a religious thing, and people like you and I get confused, not confused, trying to help others. We want to help them, and all they understand is the meaning of spirituality, that I am so spiritual and I am this, because you and I, we try to help others to get to a place of total calmness, but they say, no, this person said this, that person said that, and I'm following this person's teaching, and I'm opposing this person's teaching, is all becoming a religion. Now, how can you and I, which have learned to be peaceful, not teach them, but show them?
Yeah, use myself as the example. I tried to do that, and again, that was what that question I think I was trying to articulate earlier is. Again, I've been through a lot of that pain. I had a lot of that emotional pain on a daily basis for years, right? Like that was what I believed my life was all my sad stories, and I've gone through that again with with the help of your guidance, and I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. Is like the beginning process of that I forget almost, because it becomes like here I am. I'm in this calmness, and how did I get here in the first place, right? Like I tend to forget.
Okay, didn't we do so that if you practice anything and it just becomes a habit, and because it's a habit, you don't remember how you got into the habit.
Fair enough, yeah.
But I think that most of us want to fight to get into that calmness by practicing certain things. But not my teaching is the way that I do whatever I do in my life. I instantly do it. I don't say
you have that special, that superpower.
But you know that you did the same thing.
Yeah, it took me a while though. I couldn't just.
But you couldn't do it. Initially, you would say, "No, it must be a way."
I would fight it.
Yeah, teach me, give me certain step until you clicked in and said, "You know what? The only thing is left is just to do it." And once you start doing it, what happened?
It just became a natural thing. Like it just was almost like replacing one thing for another. It just became the norm, I guess. You know.
Yeah. It is. If I think that I want to have this glass of water, to hold it and bring it, if I think of so many process to get that, by the time I do it, I'm already exhausted because there's so many possibility for me to grab this one and bring it. But if I do it based on the habitual behavior, and I know that by nature we are that source. This is our true self. Because we are part of this universal law, this energy. Now, if we go back to the beginning of who we really are, and we know that we are the source, is there any steps for us to do? It's just going to be the way that we have been doing it for billions of years. It is us. We are not separate from this universe. We are the part of this universe, and the part cannot be separate from the totality. Now, why do we have to make it so difficult for ourselves?
I don't know, but I was one of those guilty people that I made it so difficult for myself, and I realized it was always just myself. You know, that was part of the removing of it, was removing Jeff, so to speak, out of the equation.
But did you remove Jeff from the out of equation?
Only in a mental sort of construct or concept. Like there was no. I had to realize what I was not. That was the removing part. I had to realize I wasn't my sad stories.
Okay, and therefore, when you remember that you're not your sad stories, did you have to remove it, or it just you knew you are not?
Yeah.
Therefore, it was nothing to remove.
Exactly, and it's all those. Again, it's so. The ego is a tricky little bugger. Like it wants to make sense of everything, whatever you call it, ego, mind, your thoughts. Like, that's been my experience, is that it wants to make sense of everything, and that's where we need the concept that we need steps or something to get there, as you had said earlier. But there really was nothing to remove, just the idea maybe that there was something to remove.
What is it? Because I'm still, even though I put everything into steps, I am by myself. I put things in the steps because everybody else wants it. But is there steps? Is there such a thing as a step?
Well, I wouldn't say a step, but there is a process, unfortunately.
Yes.
Right? Like, we all have to come through our own awakening process. So if you want to consider that a step, then I would have to say there is a step, or steps. But it's kind of like a convoluted thing, I guess, where it's a concept that needs to be removed, I think. That would be the step, is removing the idea that there has to be steps.
But if you take action on everything, is the action, is it a step or is it action? It seems that our mind likes to have a certain process. I have to do this task before I can do the next. And that is what the mind says. But if you and I will look at life itself, and we know in order for me to be happy, I have to have less negative thought, something that is going to make me unhappy. No.
And I think, again, there's the going back to the original kind of question was, how do we help others see that there are no steps? Maybe that would be the question that I was trying to get to. Because, again, like, everybody has to have their process. I had to go through mine. You surely went through yours. Yours was more of a sudden kind of awakening. Mine's been a gradual process. But even I was reading recently that those who have a sudden awakening still have a bit of a process to kind of adapt to that.
That's correct.
As if you have that thing every month, right?
Yes.
So there's still a bit of a process in adapting, I think, to awakening.
It is a growing part of it. It is maybe we should not call it a step, because the minute you call it a steps, it means that there's a ladder. I have to take another step.
It's like a task.
It's a task. Therefore, it becomes a chore. Now, if it's growing part, if you're looking at the trees and you're looking at it and say, wow, every year it's growing. It's more enjoyable looking at it that way than saying, okay, I have 1,000 tasks before I get to total enlightenment. And then what happens after you get there?
I can hear a partridge.
You just once you get to your enlightenment, once you know the knowing, that is just the beginning. Then in another growth there is another understanding, because from then you actually start living life. Then every moment for you becomes a growing, not steps that you have to grow constantly. Now, you're asking, how can we help others to understand there is no steps?
Yeah, to realize I guess that's a good way to put it.
Now, but can we do that though? Because everybody else...
I don't know, again, like I was asking that the other day, like how can we, is it even our job to, as being maybe more awakened than some, because I do feel like that's the responsibility of those that are, I don't know if you want to call it gifted with that, like, you know, it's part of humanity's, in my belief, overall purpose, I guess, is to awaken. Consciousness wants to evolve that way, and is it even our job to help those ones that are here and aren't quite ready? You know, like, can we force them in a way? Like, and I don't want to say force, but because again, like when I see people that seem to be stuck on something, it's like I feel like I don't know, responsibility, or again, it used to be kind of an egoic response, but I do believe it's source related now, that it's kind of like it's aligning with my purpose in a way. But I, again, forget the beginning stages of how I even did that initially, because now it's just the norm, right? Like I'm just sort of at peace on a daily basis. And there are instances sometimes where I'm triggered by things, but they don't last as long. They last for maybe a few moments or a few minutes, as opposed to like a day or a week. So there's still things that trigger the ego. So I'm not completely fully grown or gone through that growth process. But
well, let's see if it's, because you ask, is it our job?
Yeah.
Or is it our responsibility? Now, if you take it as a responsibility or as a job, do you enjoy it anymore? Or does it flow naturally? Because this way you're going to be teaching something based on your understanding, not from the knowing.
Fair enough, yeah. But I know we can't save as you've said before, every fish on the beach.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to sit there and watch the ones, like, I sometimes get emotional when I see a kid in Walmart who's kind of screaming and carrying on. Like, it's like, I feel bad for that kid.
Yeah.
Because who knows what's going on in his life, and his parents are just maybe part of my ignorance, but they're just unconscious, and like, you never know what everybody's situation is, but it seems though as if the child is suffering more than it necessarily needs to in some instances, and people suffer more than they necessarily need to, and it becomes like again, I guess I'm making it a job, and it doesn't remove the enjoyment for me. It just seems like it just kind of pains me in a way, right? Like you just want to help.
Okay, if you
share that chocolate.
But I think because if you are in pain, then you are suffering.
Yeah.
No.
It's hard to make peace with what everything
That's right.
is. I think that's happening now. You know,
but universal law doesn't allow you to suffer. Universal law is that you grow constantly with everything else that exists in the universe. Now, the only time that you feel in pain when you pull yourself out of this growth and you stay outside of it, and you feel the separation from the total force, and because of the separation from this movement, then you are in pain. Now, if you and I going along and we see somebody that needs help and wants help, they have to want it. Because you and I, they have to give you the permission. The thing that we want to help them without getting their permission.
Yeah.
And once we get their permission, then they have opened the door and they welcome us in their room. And then here we can sit and talk.
Maybe that's the answer then, is that you need the permission. And
that's correct,
Maybe it's the permission through them from the universe, in a sense, where it's time for them. They're ready to awaken.
The thing that humanity has not given itself permission to be human. It is once we give ourselves a permission that it is time for us to become the human. Humanity means to be part of this universal law, this movement, this energy. But we haven't give ourselves a permission. If I am the one that has the problem and I have isolated myself from everything else that is good, and you come along and say, you know what, I am going to help you. Let me show you. Let me show you a life that you would totally enjoy. I, I mean, I cannot promise you that you're going to have a fantastic life. You're not going to have a problem. All this stress, everything else is going to be there. Mm-hmm. But you would enjoy life. I would tell you, no, because I'm not giving you the permission. Mm-hmm. But all we can do, you and I, is just walk around, ask the same question, knock at the same door. Somebody would give us a permission to help. Hmm. But I'm not sure most people are happy with yeah. their life because they're used to it. They don't know any better.
And I guess that's part of my confusion earlier was, is it my responsibility even, right? But they are, unfortunately, or fortunately, again, that's ignorance, but they are happy with the way their life is to a degree.
I think the only for you is to live this life. This is it. Mm-hmm. You're constantly living life. You're experiencing whatever is happening. And teaching and not teaching is still part of your experience. Now, if those people that come and give you the permission to teach them, at that time you would say, yes, I'm willing to do that.
What do you think, sorry to interrupt, what do you think permission looks like when you're talking with someone?
Look, it's just like if I cannot force you to have given that example that you cannot take the horse and forcefully
make him drink
the water. Yeah. But if the horse give you the permission, you say, okay, I'm willing to do that. That is the only way that you become successful, because you have shown the water to the horse, and horse looked at it, and it says, yes, to the water. Mm-hmm. They're not saying yes to you, they're saying yes to life.
Right.
But that is when we get upset, because I think the reason we get upset is because they are not saying yes to us.
Mm-hmm. I definitely used to get upset, right? As that same analogy, I always found myself trying to like force the horse into the water, like, come on, this is good stuff. Yeah. Eat that chocolate or drink that water. But then I learned to back off from that because I couldn't force anybody to, drink or you can't force anybody to do anything they're not ready to. So, and I realized that, but yeah, that permission, I guess, is part of it. And seeing what that looks like for each individual in those moments, because again, they're not going to just take one heaping mouthful of water every time. They're just going to sip when they're ready to take a small drink. From my experience, once you take a sip, once you really go in the water and take a sip, then your life changes. The problem is that there are so many mirages out there, so many different type of so-called spirituality and teaching and everything else. There's so many mirages out there, and people get tricked in the play that they think that is the reality, that is the water, and they trick themselves that, okay, I have had a sip of that water,
that mirage.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a mirage, they keep going back to the same spot. And it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
It will never work.
I think that's where it becomes realizing more about what happens in each of our minds about ego and what we have currently that teaches us how the mind works and how ego attaches to things. And that's been my biggest helping thing in most cases is seeing what's going on in my mind, right? I had said to you recently that I've been getting much better at just in my mind sitting back and observing and seeing how my ego reacts to things and what it wants to take to replace one thing for another. And I think, as you were saying, is those mirages is what our mind tends to want to replace one religion for another, right? Or one form of spirituality for another that they feel. And again, I feel the ego tricks us, and they feel that they're being tricked to believe that that is their saving grace, or this is what's going to enlighten me or help me awaken. But again, it is part of their process, so I'm not trying to knock it as if it's something bad. But like, I understand we all have our steps that we need to go through the processes to get to our ultimate awakening or enlightenment.
Well, I think I'm not very comfortable with the awakening and enlightenment and all those.
Yeah, you like to call
elevation.
it knowing.
Is it the knowing itself is just once you really realize who you really are. Are you awakened, or you just come to understanding? I am that. I'm always been that.
Mm-hmm. You've come to find who you truly were, who you truly are. You've come back to where you were before, or however you want to phrase it. You come back to knowing. Basically, we were born and we go through life being pushed away from the true knowing, the connection of source.
Yeah,
and eventually our job is to get back to that, our purpose, if you will. That's my understanding today.
I am not sure why we confuse ourselves with life. It is so basic. Life is not complicated. Life is just being here at this moment and enjoy everything.
I know, even these questions that I'm asking are complicating it.
Yeah.
It's removing myself from just being present, right? They're trying to figure it out, but I've always been inquisitive that way. And I do feel that's helped me in my process, my journey of growth to knowing, my journey to knowing. But it is very simple, and I've come to learn that, in that we do overcomplicate it. We get in the way of ourselves, ultimately.
The easiest way to know the knowing is to be present, to be in this moment. And everything you do it in this moment.
If you and I were purely in this moment, we'd have nothing to talk about. We would just
and
be
we
at
have nothing
one.
to talk about.
Fair enough, yeah.
That's the thing.
We would just be sitting in silence.
We are just sitting here. We are looking at ourselves. You and I, we are looking at ourselves, and we are saying, what is it that part of you and I can get trapped in our past? And since we are talking about it, we have to recognize it at this moment. Because if you and I talk about it that we did it a year ago, 10 years ago, all we are talking about is something that we did it in the past. And we miss totally what is happening now. Now, you and I, we are looking at what is happening to us now. Now, at this moment, you and I sitting and listen. And that's the only thing is left for us to do. And that is the basic teaching that we have. You are in this moment, and you do exactly what is happening to you at this moment, be it getting punched, be it making love, be it losing someone, or eating,
falling in love,
or falling in love, or fighting, or you're dealing it at this moment. Now, if you're dealing it with this moment, is there stress in that?
No, that's acceptance, right?
You're accepting that that's what it is. Because stress is not wanting something that is happening at the present time and comparing it with something that you had 1 hour ago, that you had no fight. But there's a fight at this moment. You and I are fighting. Mm-hmm. We are arguing. But the minute that moment gone, do I need to think about it anymore? Or that moment is already past?
It's already past, but we have a tendency to want to almost, the ego has like an automatic repair mechanism, and it wants to like continually think about what just happened in that argument and where that person was wrong, and all just to sort of strengthen itself and keep its own identity of who or what it believes it might be, all its stories of itself. So yeah, there's no need to continue to hang on to it, but unfortunately humanity, I use that word a lot, unfortunately, but humanity has a tendency to hang on because of the conditioning of the mind, I guess, and the egoic structure of it all.
And how difficult it is for someone to come to that conclusion that being in present time is far greater than being in the future, in the past.
It's very hard for some, in my experience.
And that is our difficulty to deal with it. How can we teach someone?
I was that person to you, right? Like I always pushed back with what you would basically point my ego out on, you know, like attachments to things, and I would be like perplexed thinking like, no, that's not it. Like, because I believed what was going on in my mind. I believed all my stories, you know? So I've been on both ends of that. I've been the person who is rigid in their stance and their belief of what, and believing their thoughts. And now I'm kind of on the other end of that, talking with people and seeing that they're the ones that are rigid in their stance and in their response. And again, that question originally was, how do we, those beginning steps, how do we make them, help them to see that the gentle unfolding or the initial undoing of all that, the unraveling, you know? Like I've been through it with you, and I tend to forget. I know I've said this already, but how I even went through it, you know, in the beginning.
Yeah, every time that you and we talked, you always give me the permission. You allow me. You allowed me to ask you a question. But there was certain time that you would refuse.
That's true. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be able to help you.
I know.
Until the time
I was ready, I guess, right? Until I was ready to actually accept that.
Yeah. And that's it. I think that that's what we found, that today we recognize that the key for helping others is to get their permission.
And seeing what that looks like in each individual. Because it definitely won't be the same. It might not. It's not as simple like, yes, you can ask me a question. It's not that cut and dry. It's about, I guess it's when they're ready. That's the permission, maybe, is when they're...
When they're ready, they're going to just open themselves. And they are permitting you, so, you know what?
This is me.
This is me, and I'm drowning. I'm gonna, if I don't get your help.
It's like they've punched themselves out in life, and they're just, you know, they're so tired. Because that was me. I was tired of it all. And I was just ready. Like, I just wanted an escape from myself, ultimately. Like, I call it an escape. I just wanted to be free of all that and my own pain and my own suffering, not realizing I was creating it myself at the time. But so I think that would be, like you're saying, right? That would be my opening up, my giving you the permission.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't give me the permission, would I be able to help?
No. That's for darn sure.
And why? Why not?
Because I would not be ready. I would not be wanting you to see all of me. I would not be willing to be vulnerable and let you see all the what I perceived as my pain and my sadness, or my own perceived judgments of myself, of who I am and how I'm hard on myself. Right? Like I was always very open with a lot of that stuff. I've always been a very open and vulnerable individual. And I think that's what allowed me to give the permission to you, right?
And that is the answer to your own question. That how can we help people? The only way that we can help them if they allow us. Otherwise, otherwise we are just going to be fighting them. And the fighting is not the answer.
And I see earlier when you said that, me even having, like, feeling not hurt even personally on a personal level about not them wanting to accept my help, but me just feeling like you know, like why can't I help? I just want to help. Like I'm in like that type of emotional pain is also fighting the present moment.
Yes.
Right. Like I have to realize that it's fine. They're not ready. They're not ready to open.
No.
They don't want to give me the permission, and I can't allow myself to feel an emotional response to that, so to speak. Even though there's a lot of pain and suffering in the world, but
the pain and suffering exists in the world because the pain and suffering is what they want.
They don't see it, and I was one of those people.
Yeah. And if one day they decide, you know what, I'm sick and tired of this pain and suffering, universe would change. It has to, because it's universal law. Once you are not opposing what the energy, if you're not opposing the swimming against the current, then there's nothing there for the current to fight you against.
That's true.
Now we want to fight against absolutely everything.
And there's a basis to all that, right? Like, I think for me, part of that tool is understanding how my mind works and what is actually going on up here that's fighting it, right? The ego stuff again. So learning a lot of that has helped me a lot.
I think that your ego, based on explanation, ego is our thought, as past thought that created that personality that we have. Now, you and I, we were taught by others. Something comes against you, you just fight it. Remove these things. But there's nothing there to remove. I have created all those things in me. The only one that I have to remove is me. And I love myself too much to remove myself. And then constantly I'm in conflict.
But it's also that person did that to me mentality, right?
Yes.
That they also get hung up on, like,
but
not realizing it was themselves all along.
Yeah, because you give the permission for that person to give you, to harm you.
Right.
Now again, it comes to permission. If you do not give permission to anybody else to harm you, they cannot.
Right.
And once you give the permission and you accept what they say to be the truth, then
it's your truth now.
Yeah. And then you cannot fight it. You cannot say that it is their fault. No, it's not.
Yep. Permission either way. Permission to accept someone's truth or their perceived truth of who you are, or can be a hang up for a lot of things, and then the permission the other way of helping someone, needing that kind of permission. Maybe that should be one of the universal laws, is permission.
Well, it is universal law.
Yeah.
It's one of the universal law is the permission. Because nothing, if you look at it, nothing, you cannot force absolutely nothing in this universe to become something else.
relationships or anything,
Yeah.
children. Yeah.
Nothing. Until someone gives you the permission.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And I guess as a person that has come to the knowing, our only responsibility is to ourselves to, if we are helping others, help them with the
Permission.
Unconditional love. And that you help them, you are there for them because you love them unconditionally. If they say, no, we don't need your help, you love them unconditionally.
Right. Yeah.
The end result is the same. Love them unconditionally.
Yeah. You could say
And
kill.
the other thing that I always finish the whole conversation, and then help them or serve them without expectation.
Mhm.
Because you go there and you want to help them, but you want something in return from them because you want them to become better. But if they decided they don't want to be better, you're there to help them, you're there to serve them, and they say, no, thank you, I don't need your service.
You love them unconditionally. Yeah.
You love them unconditionally, and you serve them without expectation. Because if you go and wanting to serve them, if you have expectation that they would accept your
Help or guidance.
invitation,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
guidance, and they say, okay, that's it, I'm serving.
Yeah.
But if you go and serve them without expectation, if they accept it or not accept it, if there's nothing to do, you have done your job. Now be truthful. That is another thing that we say. Be truthful. It is once you go and help them, you know what? I am here to help you to get to what you want. I am telling you the truth. Now it is your responsibilities, it is your understanding to accept it or not accept it.
Be truthful is one I like a lot because I think in part of my journey and maybe eventually helping people be at peace at some point or whatever that looks like, or is to be truthful about myself and my experience, and my own journey and my own pain and my own suffering that I've been through, and that for me is the truthful part. So I like that one a lot, and I think that's a key component. I like to use the word transparency. So be transparent in who I am and truthful at the same time, right? And that also is loving them unconditionally at the same time, because you're showing them that I'm vulnerable, I'm human, I've had pain and suffering.
And you always say compassion, which I don't have very much. I have understood from, because you talked about it. I'm a rigid person.
Militant almost.
Yeah, I am saying that this is the way it should be. But you come and say, be compassionate. I learned that. And from the being compassionate, that permission arises.
Also with compassion is serving them without expectation.
That's right, yeah.
So.
Therefore, maybe I was not as rigid as I thought I was. It's just that I am more, I don't follow techniques. I don't go steps. All I'm saying, there is no steps in life. All it is constant growing.
Maybe that's why I can't remember the beginning process. Because there was never any steps to go anywhere or to do anything, which is just growing,
It's all it is growing. It's all it is in life is becoming. To become, there is no steps. You're constantly in process of becoming. So life is constantly active,
Right.
and
And that piece
yeah.
of from you that I'd felt in the past about being strict or whatever, or kind of militant or whatever the word was that we used, came from, like I was saying in the beginning of the beginning process. You almost forget, right? Like how I even got to this place, and it's like, how come they don't get it, right? And then that's where the missing component of compassion would fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
That unfortunately everybody has their process of growth, so,
Yes.
and that's part of compassion and realizing that, I believe. But they all tie in together. Serve without expectation, be truthful, love unconditionally.
Yes. Yeah.
They all help each other.
Yeah. That is the way. Again, all we can do is sit and wait until one of the fish that falls out of the water, if you go to it, accepts, gives you the
Help.
permission, you can save them.
Yeah, I'll remember that for
Yeah.
sure.
And that is all we can do.
Yeah. And I think there's another component there I just thought about, is giving ourselves permission to realize that,
Yes.
it's okay to ask for help too, right?
Yes.
Not just ask for help, but it's okay to open up and be vulnerable. A lot of that is just judgment of ourselves and our own fear, right? So
I think that you allow yourself live life.
mm-hmm.
That is, I have allowed myself to experience everything that happens in it. I don't fight it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't question it. It's just happening. And you feel insignificant, small,
Individualized
and individual. Yeah. And you want to go tell somebody that happiness is not in the individuality, they would fight you.
mm-hmm. But that's okay, because they haven't given us permission yet.
They are not giving us permission yet. No. And that's it. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's good.